Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode. This episode is poetically titled The Astronaut's Grip, or you can call it, If You Can't Forgive Yourself, Why Should Others? And this was something this was an idea that it arose to me when I was speaking to a friend of mine. And this friend of mine was stuck in a sort of mentality of the past where, of course, this is natural. Sometimes you see it. It's as if like a child, imagine a young child wanted to say something, it couldn't say it. Now years have passed and its attention is still on that event where it didn't have authorization to move or do something. That means many human beings could be alive now, could be in the, as the New Age community so poetically says, in the here and now, yet in their inner realms can be caught and distracted in moments of their life where they couldn't actually be a person. You know, this world is it first starts off as appearing as a sort of playground. Then as you play on this ground, as you play on this ground, what happens is you notice it as a battlefield, and in the battlefield there comes the element of sacrifice, as I was speaking about yesterday. Not an ideologically extreme sort of sacrifice, not a blind sacrifice for, an aftermath, but we can say it is a sort of sacrifice of the inner realms for the outer realms, or for the outer realms for the inner realms. I, for example, personally sacrificed a lot of my, not a lot, but a certain percentage of my outer realms for example, my inner realms for these talks. It's like there was an opportunity cost of whether you focus on more of a mind forged activity or a body forged activity. Anyways, this friend of mine, it was as if he was caught in the past, and I remember he felt guilty about saying something somewhere in public, this friend of mine. And it was an event that happened a long time ago, but that event had such an emotional imprint on this friend of mine that it was as if, I remember when he would speak, it was like I would constantly bring it down to a level of, all right, let's see what happened. What's the big deal? And we would go through the sequence only for me to notice that the person had an emotional dissatisfaction. That means when you sometimes see a person is upset, there is no rational reason. The person is just upset due to a content of their inner realms. It's not per se a rational step-by-step way of you can analyze why a person has that emotion in that moment. The mind, especially in regards to our inner realms, appears as a multidimensional phenomena where you could be, for example, like, I don't know, hitting a nail on the wall and suddenly remember a moment where, like, the hammer fell from your hand or something. I don't know. Whatever. I'm just saying, like... There's the memory behind. If you close your eyes, multidimensional, multiple events are simultaneously happening. If when your eyes open, you feel as if you're in one physical, specifically event. But this physical event has concentric circles of subjective meaning, which the person sculpts. And ultimately, I personally find, in my analysis of what's going on with human beings, is that there is a principle universal philosophy which comes down to actually the first dualism the person was acquainted to, the being was acquainted to. It could be that the child was cold when it was young and its parents didn't hug it, so when the child feels alone, it feels cold, for example. There's many ways where you can see how the program of life has been written. But the important thing is that if you can't forgive yourself, that's what I told my friend. If you can't forgive yourself, why should others? If you're not willing to get up from a chair, why should others pull you up from a chair? That was my point. That in this life, a person can depend on ideological systems, on people, on technology, on hopes and ambitions. You can depend on anything. Do you know? But you're going to notice at some point you have to move the living process that your sight is found in. We awaken to our existence. But that's what birth is, believe it or not. It's like you're popping your head out of the water of non-existence. So welcome everybody in the chat section. If people are sitting down and enjoying this, something I personally do is I get a notebook or a piece of paper, and this was something my father taught me. My father told me that wherever you go, wherever you listen to people, find one good sentence, find one good thing one new thing you noticed, and that would be enough. So I would say, if people have notebooks, it becomes fascinating because sometimes rhythm unleashes rhythm. You know. Anyways, back to the talk. The astronaut's grip. The concept of forgiveness, the concept of self and world and the relationship of that. You know, there was a story which it was a Sufi story. I don't know how authenticated it is, but the story was what was the story? Okay, the story was, I don't remember the exact details, but it was a religious story. It wasn't a story from religion, but it was a story in a religious context. And this person, evidently the prophet was speaking, and some random guy joins the ceremony, joins the group, and suddenly the prophet stops speaking, as the story goes. This is a story I've just heard. I'm just sharing the story. And in that moment, suddenly, there's a man there who's sitting, and there's a man who comes and sits there for a little bit, then leaves. And the people, the disciples, are like, "What was up with that guy?" And the prophetic figure says that man is already in heaven. He says something like this. Anyways, long story short, one of the disciples goes to find that person to see why the prophet at the time said that man, that specific guy who came and was sitting quietly among the crowd, why he was in heaven. You know, and one of the disciples goes to follow this up. And he goes and he finds the person and asks him, and he says, why is it? Why did, for example, a prophetic figure say that you are already in heaven as a person? Okay, remember, this is an old story back in the day. So what happens is the guy says, because I do three things, and I don't remember exactly the three things, but I think it was in these lines. I remember the overall image of it, though. So the guy says, I do three things every day before I go to sleep. You know? He says, I forgive others, I forgive myself, and I forgive the world. And it shocks the person who asked the question from that man. This is a story. It's not, again, I'll say this again, this is not a religious story. It's a story in a religious context. And so what the point of it was, that person who went to sleep let go of everything they had held that day. They had forgiven. You see, forgiveness is a strange ability. It means your energy has better places to be. It means your attention deserves a better life. It means there are fools in this world, and so fools stumble. There's a quote I found accurate when I remembered remnants of it in my childhood. It says, to err is human, to forgive divine. Because forgiveness is, you can say, an awareness. It has to do with noticing. It has to do with the positioning, with the presence of mind in the moment. That means there has been many situations, many times where I have been hit. And when I say hit, I mean, I'm using that in a general sense, as in like I've woken up and resistance has occurred. That means turbulence. I pretty much wake up and I have this impression that I'm piloting through the day, you know, piloting my attention through my existential and experiential manifestation. Or experientially piloting my attention in existence. And that was the value I found in forgiveness, and just this mentality that if you can't forgive yourself, that's such an important implication. That means if you know how many people on this earth, they are not haunted by ghosts. They are haunted by their past, because their past is telling them what the definitions mean. For me, the past was a big deal. It was a burden. It was the source of suffering, because without the past, there is nothing you can lose. It is the past that shows us what we have held on so far. This is why suffering eradicates in the mystical path the moment the person realizes they are non-dual. As Swami Krishnananda would say, the inseparability of the individual activity with the cosmic activity. What does that mean? That means the drop and ocean are inseparable. Therefore, who is suffering? What drop is there to evaporate, and what ocean is there to, in some sense, its waves to be denied? There is a presence of nature. You know, and so it's like, imagine you're walking by, you know, and imagine like I don't know, a bird. I'll give you an example. Like, what I'm trying to say is, like, if, for example, like a squirrel fell from a tree and accidentally hit you, or like I don't know, a butterfly hit your head or something, the person doesn't get angry. You see, you only get angry when you expect the other person's behavior. If you have no expectation for the other person's behavior, you can't get angry. You may get surprised, but not angry. Anger is, of course, when the inner realms want the outer realms to behave exactly as the inner realms do. That means if someone's, let's say person A and person B are in a park, okay, and what does person B says? Person B comes to person A and says, "You're not the first letter of the alphabet, get out of here." Person A, if person A is under the assumption that they have to be the first letter of the alphabet in every moment, this world doesn't have to listen to the mind of man to survive. The mind of man requires to notice the world. That means if people change their mindset from being in just a set of atoms hovering in the middle of nowhere towards that we are riding a horse of intelligence, yet this horse is on a cosmic level. That inseparability of the individual and the collective means there is no meditator, means there is no one to suffer. Who is there to suffer? What is there to suffer? How can atoms suffer? It is the mind that interprets. Okay, so welcome to the chat section, everyone. Charles says, after all, it did happen. How do you change that? Hatred and resentment carry an iota of hope. The issue with hatred is destruction. You see, But at the same time, I remember reading this and it made me laugh so hard when I realized it, that nobody can hate you if they don't like you first. Because you see, what is worse than hate? Imagine, again, the person A and person B. If person A hates person B, or person B hates person A, that's because person B cares about person A and wants person A to be a certain way. That means a person, the inner realms are endlessly building their simulated meaning in the outer realms, you know, and when that meaning is denied, it's very easy to hate, you know. Let me tell you why a lot of people hate, because we're a young species, you know, civilization 1.0 for now. And if a person feels they are not seen, you see, there's this idea of perfection has made us feel that it's possible to be perfect. Yet we are creatures that our perfection seems to only find us when we don't have a reference for perfection. When as Matsuo Basho says, the journey itself is my home. What I'm trying to say is that human beings are world travelers. But we don't just travel between physical locations in a physical world. We travel between non-physical perceptions, unknown and abstract infused perceptions, and real perceptions. That means I'm looking at an empty table right now. I could imagine stuff there. The stuff that I've imagined on that table is the inner realm, as I call it. It's a space. Because if the only way, and I'm calling it a space, is because thought comes and goes. If thought never changed, then man could never be man. I've had personally in my own experiences of just intuitive moments and ways my inner realms has approached certain intense events that surpass the intensity of my normal life. What does that mean? That means I imagine you're walking somewhere and the feeling arises, a feeling with no image. And you're just feeling something as you're walking by, let's say. And suddenly you notice, as if from the distance, slowly this film from the blur becoming more clear and clear. And so my experience with my inner realms is witnessing the other ways my intelligence has moved to myself. And it took me a while, guys, to conclude that we have to be pilots in this realm. Because love makes you not care. It makes you care a lot, but it also makes you not care for the application. Do you know? That means that's the thing about emotions. Emotions have more to do with how we are being than what we are doing, I find. And the only way our actions influence our emotions is because they're changing how we appear to ourselves. Again, the notion of anger. Person B walks to person A, insults person A sees the insult. If person A identifies with language, they're going to allow the other person's language to create a picture in their inner realm. So then they will identify with what they see in the language of the other person and get angry, you know. Okay. So Daniel says, do you think the world's attachment to the individual has hit kind of a breaking point, filling point, or something like that, to where we're primed to be more open to the inner realms? I explained it. I have my own way of explaining evolution. I I would say that it pretty much the simplest way I can respond to your comment is that We were unconscious objects. We became aware. We became conscious that we are objects. We were unconscious subjects, and now we have become conscious that we're subjects. And so the attention has been kept in a situation where I would say people don't feel their stories anymore. They feel there needs to be an activation of an event. I'm telling you, the people don't really care about their identities. You know why? Because their identity is different in every environment they go. You know? That means it's like when I sit here to give a serious talk, my identity is different. When I'm drawing, my identity is different. When I'm lying down on the couch, it's like my identity is different. What I've just realized is that language was the wall. Language was the border of the nation of my imagination. Guys, I think my eyes are misseeing. There's 40 viewers right now. Wow. Okay, maybe my computer is tripping. Oh, okay, no. What's key is to know that life is a process, as Alfred Whitehead says. And if it's a process, forgiveness means you're allowing yourself to see dimensions of it. You know, I envisioned an advanced civilization, I can say in my inner realms, that it's as if people never get offended by words. We are creatures that are no longer disturbed by sound. We understand it, we observe it, yet we don't identify with it. You know, that means if somebody asks you who you are, the most immediate answer is your name. That means when the mind is confronted to see what it is, when the mind is pushed to the corner, to like a wild animal, what it arises to itself to be is a series of events. So I would say that the body is made of atoms, the mind is made of events. And so these events keep the human being in a dualistic nature, because an event without change is a photo. It's not an event. Right now we're experiencing life as a film where arise as the main actor and everybody else is like the people on the sides, the side actors. You know, that means the camera is your eyes. Now the question of mysticism and reality and philosophy, and why even there was a wonder for the more, for the beyond, was simply because there wasn't a certainty of who is looking through the eyes of man, because there was a point before language where we existed. So it's either a silent nature of expression that we can try to ad infinitum to interpret through language, and it will be impossible, you know, or the mind is more real than the body, which doesn't seem to be. I mean, in certain states of mind, I say we oscillate. There is pretty much all of life. When I see all human beings, either the self is moving the world or the world is moving the self. The younger you are, the world is moving you. The world is defining you. The world is telling you what to do. You know, the older you become, the more you begin to see this world is waiting for new sentences to be written, not old sentences to be repeated. That means the past has as much value as it helps you find the new, the future. Forgiveness is key, and the way I see it relate to the astronaut's grip is because you won't be able to forgive yourself if you don't. You won't be able to forgive yourself if you fear your better life. You know, some people fear their life being worse, becoming worse, but some people fear their life becoming better because they can't fathom it. You see, your mind needs to get an acquaintance with the environments it wants to live in. Just like how people go and the real estate agent takes them and they see the house. they see the house, they analyze it, they wonder if they can live in it, then they adopt it, you know? And for me, ideology, believe it or not, is a house. People with beliefs, it's as if their experiences, life is the real estate agent, and the experiences are suggest if the ideology can be their home. For me, uh, I have felt language has defined us too much, and no one has ever been just what they say, because language can't contain the full dimensions of the human conscious experience. Imagine you're an astronaut in space, like this guy in the wallpaper. I don't know who the artist is who drew this, but it's incredible. Imagine you're an astronaut in space. Imagine you have no choice but to grip on what is near you. The astronaut's grip, that means you gotta forget the impossibility to just see if the possibility is possible. For even a nanosecond, you have to stop being the defeated of your own inner realms. It's like when the person looks at all the products that were, like, look at your environment, you see a lot of, it's like an infusion of man-made and nature-made phenomena and designs. And designs that were man-made, we all know that they arise in the inner realms. It wasn't like one day Edison was like, yeah, I want a light bulb, and he just instantly created it. It wasn't like that. It was as if the idea will bruise in the inner realms, and if it deserves, if it's its time, it steps out into the outer realms. You know, if guilt can be seen as a leash to inefficiency, the astronaut must grip its truth beyond fear. There are some things in life that surpass the inner realms, even in outer life, you know? In the Zen tradition, the person went through a round circle. They first thought the world was a simulation. Holy shit, I gotta get out of it. The Zen master would meditate, try to comprehend emptiness, try to read the sutras, and then there will come a moment where the suffering is being reverse engineered conceptually by your own intellect, by your own articulation. When you reverse engineer your own suffering, you reach a point of its simplicity before it even had meaning to suffer. I'll give you an example. Like, let's say right now there's a person and that person is suffering. Okay, let's call this person C. Person C is suffering. Person C wants to see why they're suffering, so they reverse engineer. They're like, who am I right now? I'm person C. They're wondering who they have been. As the person sits down to wonder, reverse engineer, they go back to a time before they were born. What is, sorry, not before they were born. The wonder of the abyss of the last memory, of the earliest memory. That which was behind the earliest memory. When you go towards a sort of reverse, now what happens is, I personally had a memory where I was a child, like it was me at maybe like 11 months old. I didn't even have language identity. I just remember it as a moment of sight. That's it. Just a raw moment of sight, not even individualized. There was the witness though. I remember the conscious witness prior to the individuality. So that's why I'm saying that once we wonder about free will before man existed, the concept is void. Somebody once said, everybody is fighting a battle you can't see. And when you realize everybody has unknown variables to their perception when they look at the world, you can never see a person's eyes, for their eyes go beyond their eyes. It's even though these two stargates on our face are supreme, they are divine instruments. For me, the miracle is sight. That is the miracle of life, conscious sight. That is the only thing that makes me feel there is something more roaring in the distance. The heart beats without reason. Our species got this far without language, and now it has dwelled in language so far we are becoming aware of the language threshold, the most important concept on this earth. The most important concept on this earth. After greatness, I would say, is the language threshold. That there comes a moment in life where the human being is like, what the fuck? Does it end? And it does. And so what does that make us? It makes us energetic performers of our own choice. Until the edges of the wall that has contained the individualism collapse. There's something I'm going to read for you. It's one of the most intense passages that has come to my attention from Tibetan Buddhism. Hopefully my emotions can stand firm when I read it. Guru Padmasambhava is a very important figure. And he had an assistant. He was this enlightened Buddhic bodhisattva figure. And he had this 80-year-old servant. And the 80-year-old servant is like an enlightened guru I have served you for 80 years, this old lady, and she's like, I know I will die. Tell me what to do. And this is what Guru Padmasambhava says. Hopefully I could find it. Let me see if I can find the story, guys. It's not here. There, and then Guru Padmasambhava in Tibetan Buddhism, they have their metaphysics is very, very, has a superiority that's for even foreign, of course, to my cultural mind, but I understand it, that they knew this world was multidimensional, so they weren't afraid of the multidimensional, so they could see beyond the multidimensional. That is the Buddhic walk. So I'm going to find this story for you guys. Hang on. This story is very intense because the answer he gives to that 80-year-old lady who was saying, Guru Padmasambhava, what do I do? It's about to end. And Guru Padmasambhava goes into this accurate description of the elemental realms avalanching, collapsing, and then the attention being left. You know, of course, in Tibetan Buddhism, they have the concept of the bardo. It is their sense of afterlife. In the Abrahamic monotheistic traditions, well, let's start from the zero way of saying it, where from a secular mindset, religion is man-made, therefore it is hollow. But from a religious mindset, uh, from a non-secular standpoint, religion is from some unknown intelligence. Therefore, due to it having an element of mystery and continuity, it feels engageable, I find, by a lot of people. But what the monotheistic tradition says is, like, if you were to compare a Buddhist, let's say Abrahamic religions, um, compared to the mystical traditions even, the situation would be that, for example, the Abrahamic tradition doesn't acknowledge reincarnation but acknowledges resurrection. That means from a theological standpoint, it's like man is born, and then when he dies, the Creator resurrects him, and then he's judged, and then he goes to where he was meant to. Something like that. In the Buddhist transition, it's in the Buddhist way of thought, it is very different. Because for them, incarnation in this world is not a good sign. And it doesn't mean it's not a good sign. It just means this is the bottom part of the mountain of the dimensions that stand in this world from the Buddhic way of thought. So this is a world where it's like only if you're on work duty you should be here. If you're not on work duty, you shouldn't, being poetic, on like transmigrating soul work duty. It's like, my God, I'm even working as a soul, you know. What I'm just trying to say is that it's the idea of continuity and the idea of change, and how our truth wants to remain here, but the world can't. So the only way you treat this world is, it's like, it's very simple to kind of perceive it, that all right, either it's empty, either emptiness wins, okay, either fullness wins. It's infinite. It was infinite from the beginning. We think that the finite was here first, and we are wrong. Or the mentality is, whatever this is, there is something beyond it. That means it's either something, nothing, or something else, you know? Yeah, let me see if I can find this. Guru Padmasambhava's assistant. Come on, Google. Saint Google, answer our prayers. Okay, I shouldn't put assistant. I should probably put servant. That was more like a word. Probably. Sorry guys, I can't find this. I can't find this. But anyways, in the Buddhic tradition, there's this concept of the bardo, which is the afterlife, and there's this ceremony that, of course, in the Buddhist tradition, the process of death is through cremation, and for 40 days or something, I believe it was 40, the monks just sing and pray and are trying to guide and trying to assist the being in the subtler dimensions. It's next level. Tibetan Buddhist tradition, let me tell you, the compassion of this dimension, of this plane of existence, is assisting other dimensions. There is multi-dimensional events, but not multi-dimensional events that can be conscious to an individual, for an individual is accepting a certain division and separation in the moment. You know? That means what really is setting people apart is how they're identifying they're separate from their environment. That is where your character comes from what you see, and after seeing that, what you are. That is it. That is really what has always been happening. We have been observing, acting to realize the mere presence of energy in the moment is an instantaneity of being. That when something exists, as long as it exists, it is immortal. You see that? We are conditionally immortal. This sentence structure that I have created, where I say if you can't forgive yourself, why should others forgive you? You can put that any verb. You can put any verb there. You can see it's as if, why should someone pass you the salt when you can get the salt yourself? You know, that's the difference. You can see it in even when I was a kid, I could see it in like others, and I don't know how to say it, but it's like there are some who ask without try, and there are those who try then ask. Those who try then ask, they can hold more. Because honestly, it's a coin flip. For me, I've had so many moments where I've been afraid in those moments, and so many moments where I haven't. It's like even though the situation was intense, I just wasn't afraid. My understanding made the fear evaporate. But situations I couldn't understand, of course I was afraid of what would happen. You know, it's like being afraid of driving a vehicle but not being able to see through the front window. Of course you get afraid when there's a moment or a situation where the unknown variables increase to a point where you feel they may now replace your known variables. Because the way we conduct ourselves as individuals in society is that we need a stable point of function. That means when I come to give this talk, I mean, even though I'm saying that the study of character and the psychology of the creature can be reverse engineered into a non-dual, non-fragmented state where there is no separation between the whole world as one event and the individual as their own event. You see, that's why I'm saying the inner realms and the outer realms. When you truly see the outer realms, you will see why the inner realms exist. They exist to serve it. The mind exists to serve matter. And it is only by the mind's effort first that matter will then understand it is here to serve the mind. You see, because I thought about it in a totally hilarious way, guys. In my youth, I attempted this thing called, I can't even pronounce it, telekinesis. Something like that, where I wanted to clean my room. This was even before I saw Star Wars. I wanted to clean my room. I wanted to move objects, you know. I wanted to move stuff around just by looking at it, you know. And I remember at the time I was like 11 or something. I went on the internet and searched, and I saw this forum where this guy's like, look at the candle until you're the candle flame, then move yourself as the candle flame, you know. And I remember I was staring at this candle, but the telekinesis seemed to be always, there would be, it's like, you, even if the person felt something move, they could never tell, you know. So then I wondered, what if the world had a personality, and if the world liked you, abilities would emerge. If the world disliked you, if Mother Nature was like, yeah, okay, all right, this guy's doing messed up stuff, then perhaps the blessings are taken away. You see, this is why honor of the living was the highest honor, not honor of the objective, not even honor of the subjective, the honor of life. Because you see, we are right now, because we're alive, the experiencer is in the driver's seat. But when the body, perhaps, if we entertained Rene Descartes' mind-body dualism, let's say the body in its own dimension dismantled, but the mind was in its own room and nothing happened to the mind. So that means in my dreams I've experienced a sort of death, like a couple dreams I've seen where I've died in the dreams. And you know what happens? Like in the dream, I see my form. Of course, it's in a dream state. It's not a testament to anything. But I'm just saying, in that dream state, it was a sort of experience where, you know what, it felt like I am something. It's like the potential energy went. That's it. Right now we're existing with physical potential energy. We don't notice it, I feel. It's so second nature. We don't understand the blessing of it, you know, that we are potential right now. But in other realms, the potential is not authorized, I find. You know, when you become non-dual, then it's like you see, guys, I am not suggesting that we forget about realism because it is limiting. I'm saying that we should look at realism, get to the limits, and then we have no choice left. That means I was like, how is it possible? How do we get the world to stop fighting itself ideologically? The hardest challenge. That means anybody out there who's trying to solve a problem, this is the biggest problem. That there is 8 billion creatures. How do we get them to fly like a group of birds in rhythm? That is it. And the rhythm is the law. That means there is so much change. It's as if, you know what it is? The way civilization is happening, everybody probably feels like a time traveler who's come to the past. Because the inner realms are way more advanced than the outer realms. The outer, excuse my language, but the outer realms look like shit, but the inner excuse my language, I'll be more discreet. The outer realms are not as up to date as we can envision them in their inner realms. I can envision incredible architecture of buildings. You know, I could totally see a city where all the cities are just sphere. All the buildings in the city are spheres. Can you imagine a sphere skyscraper? A sphere scraper? A sky sphere scraper, you know? Like, so I'm saying the design has room to change, yet the designer is the changeless witness. It's like somebody asking you, who is it that is aware of the memory and who you see yourself as now? That means right now, in this present moment, I am being a memory, just being an instant memory for my future self. I'm sculpting the memory of my future self by how I'm existing right now. So what does that mean? That means the present is a memory to be, the past is the memory. Now, in this moment, right now as I'm speaking to you, I'm remembering a point in my childhood where I climbed a tree in my cottage in Iran. Do you know? I'm just thinking in my childhood. Now, right now, as I'm speaking, I have a subjective self of this moment, and I have access to the subjective self of that memory, but which subjective self am I? You see, we are watching our life. from beyond it. The mind is the crown of the royalty of intelligence in this sector. Imagine we become galactic. Imagine that civilization. Imagine they go ask the child, what nation are you from? The child gets offended and says, how dare you? It's one planet. How dare you? Like imagine we get to a point where we actually care. We want to be an advanced civilization. My argument for an advanced civilization is so simple, that why not? What argument is there against it to see what the greatness of whatever is on this rock would be like? And that greatness won't emerge if everybody's trying to make the past smile when the future is crying. This world is not an illusion. It is an illusion if you feel untrue. If you have broken your own subconscious natural law. Because you got to understand, I understood why human beings are truly natural, and what that means in a world where the food is unnatural. It's a beautiful mask of a great dream, the modern world, but it's a mask. It's the mask of those who gave up. That's why there is dictators. That's why there is violence. That's why there is the chaotic leadership. Why? Because they gave up. They are like, we're doomed. Fuck it. That's why. But we are not doomed. That's the cool part. That whatever happens, there is this strange rhythm. You know what that means? That means endless forces. It could be natural disasters. It could be unnatural disasters like war, But regardless, there is like a little drummer in civilization, which is the genetical pattern of the human being like, I'm definitely going to see what tomorrow looks like. So in that state, your forgiveness is to forgive your past self. I don't know, this is something that I've done often. My inner realms, because the moment I realized I'm not a thought, that I stretched my arms in my inner realms. Whoever's listening, I would like you to one day, one morning perhaps, or whenever, just some moment you feel, when you feel ready, just go and sit somewhere in nature for 10 minutes and just watch nature. No meditation, nothing, no teaching, no super secret, supreme technique. It is just watching the life of the world before opinion. It is attempting to see the simpler levels of life where before it had reasons to break itself. And after 10 minutes or 20 minutes if you like, 10 to 20 minutes of just stillness and silence and just being a creature of a natural world, watching it. Now then, in your inner realms, evoke your past self and evoke your future self, which in another way of saying would be, imagine the most chaotic version of yourself and imagine the most ordered version of yourself standing in front of you and staring down. So imagine you're sitting in nature and you've envisioned in front of you the worst version that your mind can see of yourself and the best version. And both those archetypes are standing in front of you, staring at you, and you're seated on the ground. And imagine for a moment that those archetypes are looking at each other. at first. Your best self and your greatest self and your, or let me say it like this, your most chaotic self is staring into the eyes of your most ordered self. They are codependent archetypes. They need each other to exist. The superhero and the villain, they are soul companions of an event, of the same event. Now imagine your greatest version of you and the worst version of you now stared at you, and you were seeing that. You saw the greatness, the greatest greatness of this world, and the chaos of this world look down on you. Now, whoever's trying this activity and is still seated, get up and you'll see that you are witnessing chaos and order. Rendering intelligent, witnessing superior to the dualism of the world's face. You know, this might sound strange, but I've had moments where it's strange, like it's really personal thing to share, but I don't know, I've had moments where I've, in my inner realm, seen nothing. It's hilarious when I think about it, but at the time it was a profound source of tears, where you realize it ends. The it ends. And all you ever were was the energy of the sight that went forth. The pilot of consciousness navigates as the plane of existence. The plane of existence has two wings. All the known and unknown variables, all dualism. You gotta forgive the world that doesn't see its own potential. What else can you do? The way human situation is that if human beings fight among themselves, their defenses against forces outside of themselves would be more. That means even though we feel there is no aliens, but I'm thinking that let's assume there were. Let's just assume there were aliens. And we would notice that if we were fighting among ourselves, that would be the best time for an alien invasion. So, you know, so so what I'm trying to say is that it's like we don't want world peace for some blind utopia. We want world peace in case if a greater chaotic force engages the human being. Because honestly, there's every person on this planet, they're living two lives. Two lives. There is a life that only you can see that you're living, and there is a life that the world is living, regardless of if you see the world or not. That means it doesn't matter how much the person defines their intelligence is, the elevation of their intelligence. It is like if you can notice there is something unknown happening, that's like pretty much uh, that's like the scholar's table, you know. I concluded one day that ultimately what the human being wants is eternal participation. We want to satisfy the emotion. Guys, it's an incredibly hot day, but because it's windy, it's like the wind is honestly the invisible mover of the visible. You know, the dry leaf on the ground may never know why it's being moved by the wind. All right, let me see where can I go with the stock. The ast- the image I had for the astronaut's grip was I just felt that in the void, man has to hold on to something. So if in the void man has to hold on to something, you can say in the void of the mind, man is holding on to matter. Because we can control matter, it's easy to identify with it. Have you noticed the person identifies with what they can control? There we go. And people identify with what is in their control. If you're not, if something is not in your control, you don't want to identify in it because then your performance becomes questionable. Because, you know, okay, so Daniel Martin asks, usually, I'm practicing to just say the first names only. Daniel says, so does an advanced society have to start with our enlightenment? Or is that whipping the cart instead of the horse? Okay, so incredible question. So, advanced society. See, an advanced society, of course, it's 50% your free will has to do some shit, and 50% the governing overall blueprint of the civilization has to change because it's a design problem. People can be good or bad, but the design suggests the space where they can be good or bad. If we can create a civilization where its value systems no longer judge it in a rash way, it doesn't mean. So the thing is, like, there's one approach to violence where we're like, how dare there be violence? We violently go try to crush the violent, not realizing we're also being a part of the violence. So you can try to fight fire with fire. It's like you'll be like that guy who went to the fireman. I got this, guys. I'm gonna fight fire with fire, and he started flame, using a flamethrower on the fire, and the firemen were like, "Get this fool out of here! He doesn't understand. You don't fight fire with fire." You fire with water. What does that mean? That means fire is an uncontrollable, unconscious state. It's rage. Have you noticed rage? Like, let me tell you, anybody can get angry and just grab paint and just splash it on a canvas. You know? We can call that rage painting. Where the person is releasing anger on the canvas rather than onto the world. Meaning cannot arise if life is instantaneous. It can only arise if it changes from one point of reference to another. That means for me, it feels like life is like this film we suddenly are in, and we are aware, we are watching this film, and we're only aware of a tiny percentage of it. You see, the human brain can't hold all information, but it can extract general patterns. So that's why we generalize things, because it can echo on into eternity faster. If you notice that when I speak, I attempt to speak about questions that I felt our ancestors would wonder about if they could see this world now. This is how it begins, I think. You cannot build an advanced society if you can't see one. That is the truth. You cannot build anything you can't envision. So just like Michelangelo, he saw the angel in the stone and set it free. I don't care who you are, if you can't see the angel in the stone, you can't set it free. If you can't see what an advanced civilization looks like, if you can't fathom it, then how can you bring it? Do you see? How can you invent an invention you don't know the designs to? So you see, there needs to be this collective effort where 8 billion dimensions of human existence contribute to the overall, I call it civilization 2.0. One thing that I'm attempting to do is I realize we have 30 years before a potential technological revolution and singularity may change our lives, where we will be more interested in paying attention to an intimate cyberspace life rather than just a life in nature. So right now that you get to see nature, take a good look at it, because in 30 years, the nature of the world is going to become in accordance to the collective desire. If we desire, here's the idea. It's like Friedrich Nietzsche said, a man killed, God is dead and man killed him. That's what Friedrich Nietzsche declared, with a sort of sorrow, as if like we destroyed like a letter of the alphabet for no reason, you know. Like a conceptual standpoint, just the design of the idea. And I don't know, you gotta see the angel in the stone. You gotta, behind your eyes, feel you deserve something better, or you'll never get it. And the only way you'll feel like you deserve, you can actually experience your own karma in this life, is by being honest. That's the only advantage. I don't want to say only, but that's the point of honesty. Not because like some sky daddy with its beard made of clouds is telling you, because in some sense, it is, you want to see what you are. And then when you get to see what you are, your DNA is like an instrument where you have mastered how to play it, and then you share. You share the joy of the world that you see. So here's the thing. The issue is that it's like, why does, oh my god, this bee is here, guys, hold on. Okay. Here's the thing. You can't update the system if you're not in it, and you can't update the system if you're in it and you're just going with the system. The system doesn't want you to even listen. For me, I think no human being wants, like when they ask someone to do something outside of a business context, like that brings a different dimension of value. But I'm saying like nobody, I think people want to, the experience of the new surpasses the experience of something the person is familiar with. That means the unfamiliar is entertaining. It's a new pattern. So, guys, Bon in the chat section says delusions are umbilical cords. Without delusions, society would collapse, as I seem to have within myself. So, interesting comment, but remember the umbilical cord is cut after some point when the child emerges, you know? For me, it's two. First of all, we got to look at it as Elon Musk suggested to entrepreneurs. He said, when Elon Musk said something incredible, he said, when you're starting a business, or when he was starting a business, his attitude towards the business was not, okay, I want this kind of image of success. His attitude was to reduce the percentage of failure, you know? It wasn't to instantly build an advanced civilization. It was to reduce the percentage of the failure, you know? Right now we're trying to reduce the percentage of the failure of early extinction due to unevolved psychological behavior. Do you see what I'm saying? So interesting comment, Bon. It is true. I wondered about this at some point, that should the illusion remain, and then I realized the outer realm hasn't cared for the illusion. Technology has ran as if, like, I can't tell you, but like the world has really taken. It's like the world has made an intense chess move, and now it's the time for human nature to make a chess move, to make its chess move. No, 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 no. Bon, I disagree. Like, I agree with what you're saying, but I disagree with your word choice in the chat section. Here's the idea. We got to know what we're aiming for, so we got to have a sense of it, but then we got to take a practical approach like Elon Musk, where we're reducing the percentage of failure. So if you want to be a person who wants to be successful, you got to have a definition of that success. That means you got to be able to close your eyes to be able to envision it anytime. So anytime something happens that doesn't motivate you, that you can just close your eyes and remember your inner realms and run back. Run back into the battlefield. This life is something strange that if you stand your ground, it rewards you. But if you deny your own honesty, or the honesty of the moment that you have somehow intuitively perceived, there is a karmic turbulence. And that's when the pilot, in some sense, the world, the co-pilot comes in and says, hey, buddy, as if the pilot has drank a little too much, you know? You know, guys, I shared I've shared a link in the chat section, you know. Sometimes in life, you know, you can just notice its multidimensionality. There's a scene in the movie Airplane where in the movie Airplane, the guy's like, surely you can't be, surely you're mistaken or something. And the guy says, uh, answers him and says, and don't call me Shirley. That means, I don't know, I don't really think there's illusions. I think the way life can be considered a simulation is just because it's changing, not because that it's overall like a world inside a world, even though that's a possibility. You know, there could totally be a possibility that we are like the inner onion layer of the multidimensionality of this world. Who knows? Okay, so Bourne says, Mr. Within, the mind is precious, but we're a part of a masquerade, a proliferation of futile fashions without which we would expire on a yawn. I will tell you this, man. The masquerade is necessary for the discrimination of the true. Sometimes you need the illusion to even have a concept of truth. Sometimes you need the unknown to be able to update your knowledge. So some people are looking at, when I see, I changed my morality, guys, because it was bothering me. I had this sort of kind of, like Iran, of course, is a theocratical society where religion, church, and state haven't separated yet in that nation, you know. I don't know, guys. I don't know how to wrap these words towards the next angle, but really, you are a moment. You are a moment where choice can arise. You are energetically contained. The biological body is the candle, the mind is the candle flame, and as Rumi poetically says, when the candle flame infuses with the sun's light beam, there is an inseparability of the individual mind. That means it's as if it's like we are, this life is just a melting iceberg. And so can the iceberg say it dies, or can it say it returns to what it was, what it had always been? You see? I'll tell you this next level experience I had. There's a temple. I live in Toronto, Canada, and this is years ago. And there was a temple beside my place where a Vishnu temple where they had this giant golden Hanuman statue. You could just see it when you would drive in. And so I remember I would just go there when it was empty and just go and sit in the shrine hall and just look at it and just be. And of course, I didn't have like the knowledge to go like, I don't know, like bow as they do. So I would just sit there and stare. I would honor the silence and stillness of the moment when I couldn't understand the movement and noise of it. You know, I was sitting there. They had this carpet floor. The top of the ceiling, they had this light coming in. So the light was coming exactly on the place on the carpet that had lines that would lead to the shrine, to the statues. And I was sitting there staring, just staring at one of the statues. I don't remember which one. I think it was the statue of Rama. And I got this very profound insight that what if emptiness was intelligent sight? What if space was a body for the mystery of the soul? What if we are alive as a field? So I realized that no one in history has attempted to reintroduce this idea to modern eyes, perhaps in this way. Because the value of life is we are building a society and civilization obsessed about information and obsessed about the self. You know, that means everybody wants to be informed. But what does information mean? Information means you're being more detailed in form. That means it's complexity of the form. I find it fascinating that that is life. We open our eyes and waves of information arise as events. They are translated instantaneously by this biological data processor, sensory data processor. And Gaia is like the motherboard. For me, this masquerade, Bon, to your response in the chat section, this masquerade is a 4 billion year old evolutionary opportunity. That means imagine you were such the truth that you got bored. You were truth that was bored of, you were an entity bored of how true everything was. And you're like, what else is there? And then you saw you can deceive yourself in yourself. You see? Because ability, for most people, I think it's just natural in human design that it arises as Okay, guys, I needed a quick intermission. I'm back. Let me catch up with the chat section. Malama says, what is forgiveness really? To no longer hold one accountable, to accept what we cannot change is important. It's not to not hold one accountable. It's forgiveness means there was a defeat. There was a defeat where the defeat of the inner realms is still echoing. Do you know? So forgiveness is getting up after you've been pushed to the curb. Because ultimately, the way we're thinking about it is, do we want an advanced civilization with efficient human beings or inefficient human beings? That's the modern morality. If we want efficient human beings, that would mean that we got to reduce the percentage or the possibility of inefficiency. Right? So imagine a human being that does something bad, but that bad event defines their whole life, so they feel they can never do good again. You know, that's why it's important to be. You have to be able to let go of the past if you feel you deserve to be defined by a new world. You see, Bon, in the chat section, I'm telling you, the way you're writing, let me tell you why. You have to learn to take one step back from a complexity you can't control towards a simplicity that you may be able to control. Life can in any second become complex, same way that the person falls asleep at the steering wheel. Of course life becomes complex, you know? But if the person is alert, if the person cares for how the attention can emerge and realizes this life is the only stage where you can perform as what you are now, you have to be able to see freedom in yourself to be able to give freedom to others. There was the study done that saw that a lot of violence and this is probably not a word for it, but thuggery, you know, that goes on in this world is simply because the child at a young age was introduced to a chaos they could not process. And because the child was overwhelmed and pushed by that force, they feel they were defeated in the past. So they feel they have to endlessly push to change that inner realm event. Do you see what I mean? The mind is, there's a way you sit when you sit on a chair, and there's a way your mind sits into the moment, holds itself in the moment. This is the greater joys of life, where you realize you're not just an object so that your abundance and your value and wealth is just based on your objective life. That there was a mind here all along, a mind where mystery seemed to be a star in the sky that we could dimly notice. Here's the thing. From a tactical sense, somebody in the chat section said we need people like Marcus Aurelius here. Let me tell you, from a tactician's point of view, it's no longer physical violence, because the resolution is not physical, because the power dynamics are uneven. Because they're uneven, the only way is self equilibrium. That means it's as if the eyes moving the system have to care about what's in the system, and what's in the system has to care about the eyes in the system. You know? The illusion, the argument towards the illusion and the truth is that how can there be an illusion without a truth? That means if this world is a simulation, it has to be simulated from some realness that is real. From some truth that is true. That means if the more this life feels like an illusion, that's more proof that there is truth. The less this life feels like an illusion, there is more truth. Sorry, there is vice versa, let's say. The question can go even to the point of us wondering that what is the value of letting go, because that's what forgiveness is. You're allowing the event to end, and for both sides to move on with their lives. For me, two words explain the meaning of life, and it is go forth. You can't really change the past because it's already past, it's already happened. All you can do is just walk in a new way. I think that's where the unknown has a value, when the person sees maybe there's something to this life, that it's not meant to be just an idea. It's not meant to be a belief. Maybe it's natural. Maybe it's as natural as the human being that changes every day. The world changes every day. So are we painting our own portraits subjectively over an endlessly changing objective landscape and entropic universe? Life is an opportunity where all you can do, or the best thing you can do, is just go for it. Go see what it is. There's been times in my life where there was a store that somebody went to the door of the grocery store and they tried to open it and they couldn't. And the guy came back and I'm like, is the store closed? And the guy's like, yeah, man. But I just noticed for a second it doesn't appear closed. The lights are on. So I just went to the door and I pushed the door and the door opened. And so the guy probably just came and pulled the door and felt it was closed. Do you know? But I only was able to notice it because uh, I cared enough to see what my own approach was. Sometimes I would say skill is just to see how far something can go. So guys, before I end off, I'm going to go into a quote tunnel of the word forgiveness. A quote tunnel is a section of these episodes where pretty much I look at the language that emerged from the inner realms of people about a concept. Martin Luther King Jr. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. That means you can't hate the world to a better revolution. You have to love it towards. You got to revolutionize the world by caring for it, not by wanting to break it. Oscar Wilde says, always forgive your enemies. Nothing annoys them so much. You know why? Because forgiveness, again, it allows your attention to move on. You know? You know, it's like you're seeing, imagine a kid has a problem tying their shoelaces, okay? And you see the whole time, the whole day, every day, this kid's shoelaces keep coming off, and it keeps trying and it keeps coming off, you know, and the kid's not actually living life as the years are going by. He just constantly, endlessly goes to tie his shoelace, and somebody's like, buddy, wear slippers and go see what else life is, you know? Wear sandals and go see what life is, you know? You know, that means we can get preoccupied with what was significant to the past but may not be significant to our present. And that is the thing, because there are certain desires, like you see, from a moral, I could say even religious-oriented standpoint. Oh, sorry guys, needed to drink from the fountain of youth. uh, It's Fiji water, guys. It's Fiji water. Rendering the issue of the past is non-existent. The past is a toolbox. You can use the tool for a little bit if you want to process something, articulate something, wonder about something, but it doesn't mean you should have the tool 24/7 in your hand. I personally feel like we should, like, I don't identify as language 24/7. When I sit down here and give these talks, yes, I'm an individual. When I physically move, I'm an individual. When my stomach growls, I'm an individual. Or I might be a werewolf, I don't know. But I'm just telling you that it's as if like my personality arises if it is required. So I no longer have like this bewilderment for the esoteric. I never had it, to be honest, because it never made sense. You know, that the unknown is like we wanna transcend this dimension to see another shape. You kidding me? It's like transcendence. The idea means you're going beyond shapes. You know. And people want to speak to shapes in other veils. Let's say there's infinite dimensions. Let's say there's endless interdimensional beings. Endless. So what? We want to talk to all of them? We want to talk to all the creatures in all the dimensions there are? No. We are creatures that are following the program of our species. And to reduce its percentage of failure means that individuals have to make a choice. Do you want to be weak or do you want to be strong? It's a coin flip. You know what it is? It's like a coin flip where in your youth, based on your conditioning, it's a coin flip. You know, you're either raised by the strong or or you descend. You know, there's some people who are also raised by the weak. But it doesn't mean their nature is weak. It's a coin flip where heads or tails is your conditioning, and imagine it's heads, okay? Imagine you felt you're weak. Your whole life you've been living thinking you're weak, okay? You're like, it's my coin flip, man. That's my conditioning. It's my childhood. It's my past that is making me weak, okay? So what is it? So now you consciously get the coin and you flip it around. And you begin living a life where you tell yourself, if your mind has the ability to see yourself as weak, why doesn't it have the same ability to see itself as strong? It's a choice. It's a choice. It's a choice. That's the wonder of the mind. It can move things. And things can also move it. Martin Luther King Jr., he says, we must develop and maintain the capacity to forgive. He who is devoid of the power to forgive is devoid of the power to love. There is some good in the worst of us and some evil in the best of us. When we discover this, we are less prone to hate our enemies. And honestly, guys, anybody who hates people on this earth hasn't noticed that the whole cosmos as Fermi's paradox suggests, is empty. It's empty. You guys realize this. We are the only intelligence here. For me, as far as I'm concerned, we should overpopulate, or let me say it like this. We shouldn't think overpopulation is a problem. We should just build sky cities, because the more human minds there are, the more problem-solving potential the species has. You see, the problem with overpopulation is a two-dimensional problem which has a three-dimensional solution. That's why in a book I'm writing, guys, it's going to be out soon. Hopefully. Where we have to wonder, where else have we not lived yet? And suddenly we notice the endless sky. There will come a time for our species where, just like how we see this Earth as home, we will see the galactic sector as our home. We will then see the universal sector. We will realize forgiveness meant that the past has to bow because the walk of the future has begun. The present is the judge of the moment. That means I have always only, like, the past can't really judge the future because the past doesn't get to see the future. It's only the present that has access to the past and the future. This is why the more present you become, the more you see all the classifications of the dimensions of life your mind has fathomed to be instantaneously, simultaneously in the same moment. Or as Einstein would say, we created time so everything wouldn't happen all at once. You see that? That means our meaning arose from separation. This is why individualism can function only in a dualistic state. The moment the person pilots beyond dualism, and there's different states you can pilot, and it's cyclical too. These will be shared in the book I'm writing. Anyways, the mind is a fascination of a lifetime. Don't be afraid to look at the mirror behind your eyes. Friedrich Nietzsche says, if there is something to pardon in everything, there is also something to condemn. Mark Twain says, forgiveness is the fragrance that the violet sheds on the heel that has crushed it. Wow, 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 wow. Guys, my respect for Mark Twain has just, increased. This quote deserves to be in a museum of language. Like I often say in these talks, if you're a billionaire listening to my talk, go build a museum of language, a museum of the greatest phrases ever written on this planet. H.J. Jackson Brown Jr. Never forget the three powerful resources you always have available to you: love, prayer, and forgiveness. Maya Angelou. It is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself to forgive. Forgive everybody. That means forgive your species for all its violence because it's a child that doesn't see the future yet. Forgive the fool, for the only reason the fool is being the fool is because the fool has feared their own honesty. Anytime you don't trust your own intelligence, you can't function well through it. Trust is so crucial, just like the hand that trusts the glass of water. It's a hot day, guys. Give me a break, guys. Indira Gandhi, Forgiveness is a virtue of the brave. William Blake. It is easier to forgive an enemy than to forgive a friend. Yeah, how true. How true. It's easier to forgive an enemy than to forgive a friend. You know why? Because you trusted the friend. The enemy you never gave a shit. You didn't trust. That's the thing. Love without trust is impossible. That means any two human beings, if one of them is acting with a mask on, there can be no such thing as love. And if there is love, it instantly transmutes into lust. And there's nothing wrong with lust, but it's uncontrollable. So lust is like the animal's desire, do you know? But love is the soul's eyes opening, is the soul's remembrance of where it always belonged. Maya Angelou says, you can't forgive without loving. And I don't mean sentimentally. I don't mean mush. I mean having enough courage to stand up and say, I forgive. I'm finished with it. Exactly. It's like you gotta let yourself be free, because who else is gonna do that? Who else can? Who in this world can see, dear listener, whoever you are, wherever you are in the world, who can see exactly like your eyes to come and solve your problems? This is why the only savior has to be an intelligence beyond you. That means don't wait for the unknown. Don't wait for the divine, because one day you might realize you were it. The child opened its eyes and suddenly realized the world was born before it. Dalai Lama. All major religious traditions carry basically the same message. That is love, compassion, and forgiveness. The important thing is they should be part of our daily lives. George Bernard Shaw. Be aware of the man who does not return your blow. He neither forgives you nor allows you to forgive yourself. That means this is important, guys. In any environment, you gotta allow, like, if you want, like, here's the thing. Because there isn't a entertaining or exciting, I should say, ethos. There isn't there isn't an exciting Robert Frost. Forgive, O Lord, my little jokes on thee, and I'll forgive thy great big joke on me. Wow. This is what they should teach about Robert Frost. Marcus Tullius Cicero says, let us not listen to those who think we ought to be angry with our enemies, and who believe this to be great and manly. Nothing is so praiseworthy, nothing so clearly shows a great and noble soul as clemency and readiness to forgive. Mahatma Gandhi says the weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong. And let me tell you why, guys. Imagine two great warriors, martial art warriors, swordsmen back in the day fighting. Okay? Now imagine one of the swordsmen, as this is commonly seen in media, where one of the swordsmen loses his weapon. You know, and the director's like, we got more time, you know, let's shoot more. So what happens is the martial artist in that situation, the fighter, He defeats, both are skilled, high level, great skilled warriors. Imagine two generals fighting in close combat. You know, one of the generals, imagine, like, I don't know, like the sun hits his eyes or something disturbs him unnecessarily, and then his weapon falls. The other soldier, this is why Gandhi says forgiveness is the attribute of the strong. The other soldier lets that warrior pick up their weapon because they know they are greater than even their opponent's greatness. Do you know? That's the strong, I think Gandhi is speaking. Gandhi, guys, don't people see his in the outer realms he was a feeble man, but in the inner realms he was a giant. Bruce Lee. Mistakes are always forgivable if one has the courage to admit them. That means honesty is the instant you solve a mistake. Anytime something that you feel you have wronged anything, you gotta just at least be honest in that moment. You know? That means it, you know what it means? It's like the most honorable thing you can do. You'd be like, yeah, I messed up. My hand hit the cake and the cake fell on the ground. Yes, I did it. You know? Forgive me, realm. Imagine you were someone back in the day and the king was hungry and the king was getting a cake and you accidentally, right when the king was about to eat the cake, you hit the servant and the cake fell. And the king just looked at you with a rage, this fat king. Do you know what I mean? You'd suddenly start singing a song for the king. Or something, you know? You know what I think probably the strategy would be in that situation? If you accidentally, like, made the cake of the king drop in front of the king back in medieval times, I think the attitude would be the guy would have to stand his ground and he would have to walk. This would be too extreme, but the guy would probably, like, walk over the cake and then apologize, to the king and say probably something like, forgive me for accidentally hitting the cake. I will provide my service in any way as you require. As if the person took away something from the moment, then gives something to the moment. Then the king's like, all right, I won't kill you. Like, I don't know. It's we're all gasping for more air, I'll dive into the quote tunnel a bit more, guys. Desmond Tutu. Because forgiveness is like this, a room can be dank because you have closed the windows, you've closed the curtains. But the sun is shining outside and the air is fresh outside. In order to get that fresh air, you have to get up and open the window and draw the curtains apart. Exactly. Your realm, your moment requires your piloting. And piloting means this sort of fearless, simple, honest way that you are before you think you have to be, and you function. Because the thing is not about having good karma or bad karma. It's by experiencing your karma. Not the karma of your entangled curiosity in the perfection of the simulation's gold, Excuse me. Desmond Tutu says, forgiveness says you're given another chance to make a new beginning. Well said. Francis of Assisi says, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned. That means if you are someone who's done something that you want forgiveness, just declare that you will forgive every living being you will see from that moment. Just make an instant kind of badass warrior's honor declaration to the universe that in some sense there's no point of fighting a species that is just barely making it by. For me, anybody who's been like the dictator mindset of controlling people, it's like, what are you controlling? An unupdated civilization? It's like we are at a point where we need an altruistic mindset. We have no choice. We need freedom to be able to envision that angel in the stone. that advanced potential of a civilization occurring. Because if you feel you're purely a materialistic entity, there's nothing else left than to build an advanced civilization. That's the greatest game to play. And even if you think you're a metaphysical being or some sort of non-being or non-duality, you're going to eventually realize the body's design is material-oriented. That means, regardless of us thinking of whether the world is local or not, whether does it make sense for it to be a location, or is it a location in our minds? You know, like the questions can fly into. Of course, they can stretch the edge of the realm, but I don't know. Let's continue with the quotes, guys. Billy Graham says, "Man has two great spiritual needs. One is forgiveness. The other is for goodness." Yeah. Imagine like there was this view of the pearly gates of heaven. Of course, I'm saying this playfully. The pearly gates of heaven, and there was like a nightclub bouncer. You know, and the person wants to go in, and the nightclub bouncer is like, hold on, who are you? You know, and the nightclub bouncer says, have you been forgiving in your life? And the guy's like, yeah, I've forgiven. You know, I've definitely done that. You know, and the guy's like, okay. The bouncer's like, okay. Then the bouncer's like, have you been good in your lifetime? You know, and then the guy's like, yeah, I noticed goodness. You know, I there were moments where I was honest and I did the good thing. Okay. Then the bouncer's like, all right, you're cool. You know, and you know, the party in the heavens continues. Yeah. We have no choice other than to be multidimensional. Just the concept of the unknown is the declaration of a multidimensional realm. Just the fact that there's a giant black hole. Like there's black holes in space, like, you know? Like how much can we really know about the world? It's like, imagine we studied everything in the cosmos, then we're like, what do we do about these black holes though? You know? And it would be as if like the really on some level creaturehood is like you're a tourist in a material plane. You're like a video game character that's just been entered the simulation. You wake up into the simulation and you're in a common virtual map, physical map as everyone else. But when you go to sleep or when you dream, that's like the person you know, changing tabs on the computer screen and, you know, like, you know, doing something else, you know. So that means it's like our intelligence, first of all, we shouldn't be naive enough to declare we know it, and we shouldn't be naive enough to declare that it's 100% unknown. Both of those are naiveties. They are not proper surfing the waves of chaos and order as they appear. Because for me, there is something about the attention's authority in how the moment moves. That means a totally different view on authority. You can say that the physical view on authority is like, listen to what I have to say. You know? But like the non-physical view of authority is like, where is this happening from? It was that question. I remember in 2011, I sat on a rock in Edwards Garden in this like river dash stream like thing, you know, and so I'm sitting on this rock, the river's coming from behind me, and I'm just seeing the water just gently in the stream go forward, and I'm sitting on this rock cross-legged is looking at the stream. And I remember it was a moment in my life way before who I am now, where I remember it was the first question that it was in that moment I was trying to know things in a certain way. I was trying to be something in a certain way. But when I sat on that rock in 2011, a question visited me. A question walked up to me that had never arose to me. And that question was, who is looking through these eyes? And I realized I didn't know. And it was like a part of me broke down, like in the inner realms, crying. Like it was a sunny day. It was too hot to cry, but but it was like it was a situation where emotionally I felt an archetypal collapse of an inefficient civilization within me. It was a moment where I realized, oh my God, I've been obsessed about trying to know something that is moving in an unknown way. This is why suddenly, after the scholar's evolution is into the artist. People don't realize this. There's two ways that art arises. Okay, it either arises. I mean, it ultimately arises from the unknown. But if a known system is shaken, it will have enough unknown variables to reanimate in an unknown way. Robert Frost is going beast mode. He says, "Forgive me my nonsense, as I also forgive the nonsense of those that think they talk sense." Saint Augustine, I don't know if I read this or not. He said, no, I don't think I read it. He says, "Forgiveness is the remission of sins, for it is by this that what has been lost and what and was found is saved from being lost again." Let's see the second page. What does it have to say? Lee Brown, "Forgive those who have hurt you." Powerful. That statement is so rich with style. Just like this astronaut, guys. You gotta trust your grip. You gotta trust some component to your intelligence, because you were not designed to be 100% in efficiency. It's impossible. You know? That means after some point you're wondering like what's happening to you or what's happening to others that is unfair. You're like, nature, why are you doing this to yourself? And Mother Nature, or like the guy in mind, speaks to you and says, it's because you think that way. And you suddenly fall. You fall from your ignorance into the clarity that had already rise beyond. Jane Austen, selfishness must always be forgiven, because there's no hope of a cure. Euripides, forgive, son. Men are men. They needs must err. That means when you see a violent person in civilization, forgive them because they don't understand that they have updated as an animal. They don't understand their evolutionary update. You know what happens in society? Imagine somebody with a very giant ego, this tough street fighter, is walking in the sidewalk. Suddenly he hits his shoulder to someone else. And he's about to turn and shout at the person and then sees that person was blind. Do you know? Then that person suddenly stops shouting, do you know? And starts apologizing or something. That means the most chaotic beast suddenly was tamed in realizing what it was hurting, couldn't even see it. There are wars that can instantly be stopped, which are in the inner realms, which are attitude and stoic, which are attitude oriented. And there's wars which are fighting over resources, which those are way more complex to solve those problems. And what is war? It is just pretty much the animalhood echoing in civilization. It's the echoes, it's primitive echoes. Thomas Fuller says, "He that cannot forgive others breaks the bridge over which he must pass himself, for every man has need to be forgiven." Reinhold Niebuhr, forgiveness is the final form of love. Because, guys, without forgiveness, you can't accept. Do you know? That means it's like the betrayal of a friend, and then that friend has come to their senses, so in that sense, you forgive them. And then if the betrayal continues, you dispatch. You're like, you fly to different clouds. Francis de la Rochefoucauld says, one forgives to the degree that one loves. Sorry, not Francis, Francois. Francois says we often forgive those who bore us, but we cannot forgive those whom we bore. Strange. Mahavira. Anger begets more anger, and forgiveness and love lead to more forgiveness and love. Yeah, it's like the pattern you're echoing. That means you gotta love hatred towards extinction. We gotta make hatred extinct by loving it out of existence. That means hatred arises because of a sort of, I personally consider as a sort of inner realm rejection. The inner realm the inner realm is still wants the outer realm to listen to it. The inner realm hasn't realized the outer realm is like a giant turtle in which civilization is built on its back. Its system has there's nothing saying that it has to listen to everything, to what you do. It's just that you are an effort. You are an expression. The best way to live life is by noticing how the paintbrush moves on the empty canvas. Philip Brooks. Forgive, forget. Bear with the faults of others as you would have them bear with yours. Lillian Hellman. God forgives those who invent what they need. Nikola Tesla probably agrees. Sun Monk Kid. I learned a long time ago that some people would rather die than forgive. It's a strange truth, but forgiveness is a painful and difficult process. It's not something that happens overnight. It's an evolution of the heart. Guys, slow hand clap for Sue Monk Kid. That is an incredible analysis, which I think is the evolution of the heart as the comprehension of the emotional consequence to the psyche, because psychologists really don't know how to treat emotions. They may have research, but it's not something you could do research on because there's a spontaneity. It has to do with the conditioning of the individual. As if life programs you when you're a child, then you start trying to live in the program, then you notice you've been programmed in a certain way. So you have to care to see more than your eyes if you want to actually even see the world. To surpass the like a meteor thrown in a world of cheese crust, where the meteor just goes inside the planet, cheesy planet, and there is a hole. And it has to step out of its ethnocentric conditioning. That means for me, I didn't even see it on a language level at some point. I just saw it as waves of information. Because what is language? It's words. What are words? Experiential words. Worlds. That means words harbor worlds, or they point beyond them. For example, emptiness, it doesn't have an image, but it points. The word has an image, like the lettering. You know? There was a sage named Rishi Vyasa. He was considered to be the teacher of teachers and in Vedic thought. And people considered him as the incarnation of God in language. Because this dude, back in the day, wrote 18 books on giant leaves at a time where people are like, what's a book, bro? I just want some food. You know? Like, this man, this guy was like the closest thing to like an early glimpse at a time traveler. You know? That means the inner realms wasn't, it was as if their mind was coming from the future to the past, their body was going from the past to the future. So the mind felt no choice other than to animate into the potential great expression, not even a resolution or a story for greatness. You're just a living being, live. What greater teaching can there be, to a painting that is colored by our choice? Alice Miller, genuine forgiveness does not deny anger, but faces it head on. Jewel, forgiveness is the needle that knows how to mend. I mean, calling forgiveness a needle, I mean, you probably are sewing something. Yeah. Jean-Francois Cope, I invited everyone to choose forgiveness rather than division, teamwork over personal ambition. Alexander Chase, to understand is to forgive, even oneself. So see, guys, I'm going to get out of the quote on there. I'm going to read one more quote, though. Let me see. Let me go to a random page. All right. This is the 7th page. Let's see. Carlos Santana. Actually, hold on, guys. Let me see. Okay. Robin S. Sharma. Forgiveness isn't just a blessing you deliver to another human being. Forgiveness is also a gift you give yourself. Perfect quote to end off. So that's the thing. When it comes to forgiving yourself, that's a blessing only you can give yourself, to give yourself a chance to breathe and to step out, to take off clothing that was never yours. Nature is not a perfect system. And a morality that only wants perfection and makes a law that expects perfection, imagine imperfection becomes a crime. Imagine there's a dictator in the future that says everybody like has to write only with black ink. Nobody is allowed to write with any other ink. No other color is allowed. You know. Forgiveness is what it means is that you witness your inner realms and you honor them for how they have occurred so far. You thank your mind for its service, for its art. You thank the archetype that has carried you so far for its service. Then you dare to stare at an unknown world again. And that's when the true revolution in the psyche occurs, when the human being realizes we are a force that is moving, and this force has a certain capacity to individualize and has a certain capacity, like the other side of the coin, to be a collectivity that is unfathomably great. That means, imagine the nations of the world suddenly one day, they one by one, the leaders of nations came to the United Nations and they said, from now on, whatever name our country has, there is the word sub, S-U-B dash. We are sub. Imagine sub Russia, sub America, sub Japan, sub Iran, sub Canada, sub Mexico, sub wherever. So all nations have suddenly bowed. They have bowed to the idea of the United Nations, which is an advanced progression. And it's as if the United Nations, imagine, asks all the world leaders who have come and said that we are sub nations, and the United Nations says, why? Why does every national leader want to be a sub nation? Because they all shout at the same time, because the greatest nation is an endless updating one that you can't see its face, because it is in some sense changing every second, not in a way where it's ignorance against bliss. Those wars will end, those fires will be extinguished. There will be so many children born who, a lot of things that I see as problems now, it's as if they've already done their work. You see, this world, you can either introduce yourself to it or it can be introduced to you. And the only reason You know, this is the game we're playing, where we are 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere. And that is the ultimate reason why I feel you have to forgive something that you want to evolve. You can't break something towards its betterment. The attention, there's a saying that they say that the mind is a lousy master, but it is a great servant. These were for those who had found the glow of had a glimpse of the glow of the soul, poetically in ancient times. And so, what does that mean? That means the mind is actually here to serve you. But how is the mind being comprehended, and how can its service even be measured? What is its service? There is a quote by George Baton where he says, "You must serve before you command." This is true for any art form where you will fail at first, and that's the spirit of the art form embracing. That means the man who can fail no more is the man who deserves the ultimate success. All right, guys. Sorry, my attention went to the chat section. Let me see. Where did I leave off in the picture? The art form embraces you. It embraces you when you fail, you fail, you fail, you fail. It's like defeat, 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 and then you're even like to yourself, "Holy shit! How many times am I gonna lose? Like, what is this?" You know. And then you still go defeat, defeat, defeat. Then you suddenly get this revelation, this realization that when you are at the bottom of any system, the only place left is you can go up. You can't lose anymore. You see, so those who taste defeat know what victory tastes like, or how it's different. And victory is as Sun Tzu in The Art of War. He was such a next level general. This Chinese general. He was such an incredible mind that his militaristic tactics were like one dimension. Then another dimension was the balance of heaven and earth. That means the general that witnessed the movement of heaven and earth in the moment and could abide with heaven won. That means there's a mentality of the warrior that's just the brutality of strength trying to defeat the opponent. And then there's the warrior like that, a master monk or with the staff or something, where the guy with the staff defeats a bunch of people because he is not fighting. For him, he is like walking in a garden. But for all those warriors, it's like, yeah, I'm going to destroy you. So it's like this, their savageness breaks them, because you see, there's one thing of using great force and throwing it at someone, and then there's something about that great force bouncing back at you. And so many people, all those people who are violent, they don't realize if that same violence was done to them, instantly they would get shattered. Imagine there was a robot in civilization in a very imagine there was a parallel dimension of Earth, and there was a in a sci-fi context, there was this robot, we called the robot Kronos. Okay, I just thought of this now. Imagine there was this robot called Kronos, okay? So anytime there was some person who did something messed up, like physically messed up in civilization, violence-wise, this robot would go observe. It had ultimate surveillance. It would instantly give the karma of the guy. Instantly. A civilization where violence stopped because it was instantly met. You know what I mean? That means What chaos fears is its own chaos. Because chaos ultimately means lack of control. Whether it's the supervillain or the superhero archetype, both of them need a control of their skill. To have a control of their skill needs to have faith. That faith, I mean, it means to have some sort of attention to something, you know? And that sort of trust in a world view is what motivates the behavior. So if you could change the context, the concept could experience the world differently. But if the world is stuck, if it's rooted in a certain fixed way of meaning, if language has become a blindfold or like sunglasses and you're looking at the stars and wondering why it's dim, some moments in life you just have to sit and look at the world and shout and say, what am I? And the unknown breeze hits you. And the roars of the advanced communicators is heard. Sorry, folks. A bunch of my inner realm events collided, and I became emotional for a second. But really, what I'm trying to say is that you have to look in the mirror, whoever you are. You are a member of a civilization and a species, and that's pretty common sense. Like, so, it's as if you will require to ask yourself, what is it that you expect from your universal sector, and what is it that your universal sector expects from you? And then, as you move in accordance to what's authentically important to you, life activates. I'm telling you, that's the advantage of honesty. Honesty is not per se for the outer realms, it's for the inner realms, primarily. You know? That means honesty is like a gear. Imagine you're a pilot. Your attention is multidimensionally piloting, and you're like, holy shit, turbulence, chaos in the world, time to go into the honest gear. The Japanese have a saying, they say the man is the room he's in. And so you can think of psychology as everybody is in a room of how their eyes have opened to the world before they can notice the eyes of others. So this is why selfishness is easy. It's super easy. That's, you see selfishness, you're like, yeah, noob, 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 noob evolutionary being, you know? The question is just, do you deserve an advanced civilization if you're a temporary creature? And if you ask this long enough, your mantra becomes only rise mankind, you know? It's about, this life is about, it took you 4 billion years to be able to be conscious of it, to be able to direct it. It took you 4 billion years to be able to notice the empty page and the brush in your hand. And that's what individual life is. And people are like, what is the truth? Is it the emptiness? Is it the brush? Is it the paint? No, it's using them all at the same time, because life is happening now. For why do we breathe? Why do we breathe if we don't care about our own continuity? Why do we breathe? Is joy enough? Is hedonistic desire enough? Do you know? I don't even think it's like the issue with hedonism, the issue with the self being more important than the collective, is that you don't care about the future. That's it. That means if you feel the individual is more important than the collective, then you don't really give a shit about your grandkids, you know? That's it. But if you do care, that means that's the call, the bodhisattva call of the spark of the ever-present attention, where you realize if there was no fear, who would you be? If you had made no mistakes, because this moment is a new walk, who would you be? I'm pretty sure there were certain Sufis, like back in the day, like in the likes of Attar and Shams, where probably some guy came up to him and he's like, "Hey man, tell me the truth." And the guy was like, "Tell you? You're asking me to tell you the truth, bro?" You know? The guy would be like, "You don't even understand. You don't even understand what you're standing under. You know, you think the truth is a concept. Who has ever, like, what has given us the idea that a strip of language programming code linguistic code can be everything, you know? It's just pattern recognition on a massive scale. And when we can't be in the crowd, we have to go. You know, honestly, it's like this. This is civilization. Imagine there's a giant group of birds from all around the world flying together in a rhythm. Okay? Now, some birds come and fly into this giant rhythm of civilization. Now, when they get tired or overwhelmed, they fly out and they go relax on a branch. Then imagine the eagle flies back into the crowd of the birds. Do you know what I mean? That means it's like we must develop a system that it's like people can rest in it, but they can also work incredibly in advanced ways in it. And the smartest thing we can do, I think it's something that's inevitable. That it's pretty much after 2045, it's going to be like that, where the economical sector, it's going to. Let me tell you something remarkable. It's like karma. It's karma is happening, for on a industrial level. So let me tell you what I mean by that. Right now, if you really look at educational systems, not everywhere in the world, in some countries in the world, like I'm in Canada, I can speak for that. In educational systems in parts of the world, they right now are taking more from the student than giving more. Do you see? That means it's as if right now people are studying not for the merit of the knowledge, not because they actually want to know what that's about. They just want to know how to use a tool or how to apply a certain level of calibration and skill to something, so that the employer can just so they can green can become their favorite color. Let me tell you, the situation here is that we have to free ourselves from the individual story if we are to see the collective story. That means right now, human beings, when they look at human beings, they don't see human beings. They see their impression of that being. But imagine a point where human beings look at each other. I mean, honestly, if there was an alien invasion, we'd be like, oh, look at how easy world peace was. All human beings have united because there's this weird alien and we got to kick out. You know, imagine. You know, the soldiers can be as ready as they want, but they need a command. And what does that mean? The members of civilization can try to become as good or efficient as nice as they want. but we need the system, the model for the system evolving. Now, we definitely know that the birds and the squirrels are not going to come and build the advanced civilization, so it has to be built by human beings. Now, if human beings suffer in the system, they just want to get out of it, they don't want to contribute in it. So it becomes a discrimination between the strong-willed, where in the Sufi tradition they would say the enlightenment, they would call it the pearl. And so in like Sufi circles, they would be like, yo, that guy has the pearl, or some person in town would be like, that person has the pearl, they have the wisdom, you know, they've noticed the nature of the realm, you know. And so the Sufi that had the pearl in the mountains alone was not the Sufi, the real Sufi with the pearl. The real Sufi with the pearl was the one who could have the pearl in the busy marketplace. That means their enlightenment wasn't a conditional process. They have attained an unconditional insight. Whatever condition they're in, that unconditional insight is there. So, anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. Um, you have to be able to give yourself freedom. It's as if, like, why should people give you freedom if you can't give it to yourself? You know, why should people love you if you can't love yourself? If you don't care about yourself, why should the world? Do you see so many things you have to put the key in the engine and just drive your life into its more advanced levels? You know. So, anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. I'm gonna put the Discord link here. Have a quick Q&A session in Discord if anybody's interested. Uh, Thanks for listening. The talk is ended at this point, and there was something I wrote in the subtitle. Let me actually check that. The astronaut script. Yeah, wait. Before I end off, I gotta say something about this. So, you know, there was scene, and I'm an incredible science fiction enthusiast. For me, science fiction and any future outlook on technology is fascinating. Just to see how far something can evolve is fascinating to me. And there was this science fiction episode. I think it was from this show. I believe it was called Love, Death, and Robots or something. And it was this animation show where it was the glove or the hand, I think, where there was this astronaut, where the astronaut's hand, this lady was like, her hand, she had to freeze her own hand and use her own hand to get to her space station so she doesn't fall from space. She doesn't go out of the range of her space station. So it was like this intense sci-fi situation, and so it was like this feeling that the astronaut is not, it's like there is no lies in the moment of intensity. So if the person doesn't fear the challenges of this life, actually goes and meets them, you'll be surprised what like avalanches of blessings there are when you live your life, when you actually honor your mind, you honor what you are, because what else can you do, you know? So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you at in the Discord section. The talk is ended. Blessings. And this astronaut in the wallpaper, whoever knows who the artist and illustrator is, you know, please write the person's name. I have no clue. I just find these pictures from a random wallpaper site. So anyways, I'll see you in Discord, guys. Blessings. And forgive the world, because an advanced civilization deserves it. Spot on. Spot on, man. Can I just add to that? You're not comfortable with silence, bro. That's the issue. If you were completely comfortable with silence and stillness, like if you just realize they're there, there's something where you don't need to, they're just there, then somebody could come and shout and say anything, you could hear any sound, and you're still noticing the silence, you know? So you don't get bothered. You could sit quiet for hours because there's no, you do know what I mean? You're comfortable with the silence. But if you're uncomfortable with the silence, then you shake. Then that you pilot turbulently. And I honestly, for me, for example, it's much more easier to speak when I'm alone. When I'm in public, then it becomes a different emotional tension, in my experience. Do you know what I mean? That means it's like, then in that situation, I just have to just remain still and quiet and be comfortable with the unknown. That's what I usually do, you know? Okay, guys. Okay. Sorry, I had to get something. Bro, that's you're tuning in to what me and Bob were talking about yesterday. Bob, you want to tell Dan the Parliament thing? Oh, wait. So Dan, I don't understand what you're saying. Actually, you got to say it again. Okay. I saw it. I saw the one with the flute with the different sounds instruments. I okay. So what about it? Oh, like a podcast. Okay. So can you send me a link to your page to like the online face to this project? Okay. What is so you got to give me the image. I have no idea what you're visualizing. So you got to tell me like so in what way are you seeing it? Like just share. Honestly share. Mhm. I mean if you have an audience that's important. That means if you have some what's your audience? Can I ask when you do that? Oh, so you don't even know how many people hear hear the um sure. I would be interested to collaborate. I would yes, but let me just suggest something. And here's the thing. Hmm. Okay, can I share something? Can I share something? Okay, so just look at it from how I'm seeing it. Okay, so my whole effort is I'm this guy saying I want to advance communication. So first off the bat, I encourage any sort of sharing of what's behind your eyes with the world. Okay? So if that's in a podcast format, I feel with your voice and when you were drawn to the radio, so you're a good speaker, right? So the way I would say is to build a podcast. Uh, how would I say it? Like, do you have a? Can you create a name something podcast? I'm just saying that if it's if it, because the audience right now it's a digital market. Okay, radio is great, but many like a lot of people they are playing music from Spotify in the cars, you know. So it's I'm just saying it's a digital kind of sense. I think honestly a lot of people just play YouTube videos in the car. I think like that's what I do. I don't you know. So what does that mean? That means that's where the audience is. Okay, that's where the audience is. So you if you can if we can design an elegant show with a smart vision, then I am definitely willing to be a guest on that show. So that way I can promote your show on my channel and you can promote my show in your channel. So that way it's as if my channel is like it's like rather than me being you, I am your guest. I am like helping you start it off. Do you know? And you have to now sit and think as if what design to a like what are you willing to every day wake up and not every day but you know what I mean like what interests you about the podcast because like maybe you're more scientifically minded, you know. So, so that's something we got to figure out what theme you're thinking about, because it's something then I'd be identifying with, you know? Yeah. No, no, you got to be honest, bro. Let me tell you something. You got to be honest. Yeah, yeah. I'm just saying you got to be honest because the world will see through you. That means there's nothing to hide. Terrence McKenna said this, bro. Bro, I had the same feeling you just said with Terrence McKenna and Alan Watts. When I heard those guys talk for the first time, I was like, holy shit, people can speak like this? You know? Like it was definitely something where they gave me a lot of inner freedom, I would say. A lot of insight. Oh, so mhm. Mhm. Let me share something here. Mhm. Here's the thing, man. I just want to talk to you on a philosophy level, not even a business or digital enterprise level. Just on a level of like, you want to, who is your audience? If you want to do something that's just you, that means you are also an audience member. Do you know? So you're doing that thing for yourself in some sense. Do you know? So that means you're not caring for the demographic. You're kind of like an artist. You just want to show your art. Do you know? So there's one way, but then there's also an audience conscious way where that's the model of the show, where you want new people being the new content, or do you want to be yourself the creator of the new content? Because it can become, you gotta be able to create, you know. So that's what I'm saying. If you want to bring others, if you want it to become big, if you want it as just a, excuse me, but if you just want it as a project where you're just doing it for fun, then I wouldn't join the show. But if you are doing it on a level where you are attempting to go maybe interview people on like what they think imagination is, or what is reality, or what's going on, or like what do you see, then in that case, like go see the Lex Friedman podcast. Just type this in. Yeah, yeah, yeah. AI podcast. That's the name of his podcast. Okay. And this podcast by Lex Friedman, just go see the format and the style. When I saw this guy, I'm like, this is a true podcaster, like it's as if there was a format, there was a sort. I'm more like my format's a bit kind of like all over the place. But there are some people. I'm taking a poet's angle. He's taking a scientist's angle to his podcast. You know, so So my thing is serious. You got to realize I'm someone who's trying to write a book and then go talk everywhere about it. Like I'm that guy. Like I'm trying to see. I'm like, okay, let's give it a try. Let's see what happens. So that's like a inner realm intention of mine. Now, the issue was, I'll tell you something right off the bat. I think it would have been just, this is my opinion, by the way. Like everybody has an opinion. I'm just sharing like one view on it. Okay, so it's not, I'm not being personal, but I'm just saying, in my opinion, I felt it was better if it was a lower volume music than your tone, than your voice, and the music was a constant theme. I want you to go look at Eru music. Eru, here, check this out. Eru, this Japanese, here, like that, right? This instrument, if you have this on a slow level, even playing on the radio, so the volume of this would be like 50% and your volume would be 100%, you know? Something like that, right? And then this I think it's Chinese or Chinese, I think. This Chinese instrument is like so calming, bro. Like I'm a Persian guy, and I was like, holy shit, what is this sound? Miraculous sound. So it's this calming influence. Then when people are calm, now they can listen to the conversation. Now, and the coolest thing is, you either want to create conversation on the spot, which is you got to have trust in your ability to kind of like in the moment go with the idea, or you set the idea out. Like when Terence McKenna speaks, he has a notebook in front of him. I only bring out the notebook if I need, if something is becoming like too geometric or mathematical, you know. So that means like either you know what you want to say already, or you need pointers. If it's like a 3 hour thing, I could totally see why he has a notebook. Like you know. So yeah, that's the thing, man. If the format adjusts, and I'll tell you this, a website where I get these wallpapers from. It's called Wallhaven. Bro, I'll tell you this. There's if you notice, there's a YouTube channel in my featured called Music of Fortune. You see that channel? That's a channel that I started, right? So that in that channel, the way I started it is I went and saw what the most successful YouTube channels were doing music wise. You know, I just went and studied the format of the winning model in society, right? No, 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 no. I'm talking about this in the featured channels in the corner of the homepage. Right, so that's a music channel. I just started on the side because I would listen to music while I would give these talks. So I would upload the 1 hour version. So this was something where I saw someone implement this model, and I implemented it, and I didn't get the same result, but when the challenges, when event-wise, when it was happening, it worked.